Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
All right. Well, that solves our multi-year...
And a sip of a milkshake is all I can offer you today.
If you've not listened to this show, we've spent the last 3 years on an investigatory podcast journey to figure out what our names were, and we just did it. So
yeah, the results are in. I have them in a big manila envelope. We're going to pull them out right now.
I am Steve Gibson. Whoa.
And I'm...
surprised.
I'm Dicko Toboggan. What the fuck? Why did no one tell me?
Why wouldn't you go by that name if that was your real name? I'd love that.
I didn't know. We didn't have the results.
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't that be awkward to show up at work tomorrow and everybody's like, hey, Ben, you're like, no, stop right there. I'm not Ben. I'm Dicko Toboggan.
That was a... Toboggan was a Always Sunny reference where, like, Danny DeVito always goes around saying he's like fucking Dr. Mantis Toboggan.
See, that's a show that I love, and I'd word it that I'm way behind on it, but I've never ever watched them in order because it took me years to get into it, even though you kept telling me how great the show was.
It's
so then
it's like Seinfeld. You don't need to watch them in order. There's like,
well, right. That's the thing, though.
Few set episodes that exist in continuity of each other, but that's happened more in like recent seasons.
And even then, from the ones of those I've seen, if you catch them, you might not get the greater context, but they're still just fucking hilarious. It's a good show. But they're on like season 16, 17, something like that. Maybe not quite that high.
Yeah, 14 or 15, I think.
15. And they were already to like season 8 or 9 or 10 when I started watching them. So yeah, I just kind of shotgun. It's whatever ones come on. Yeah. So I don't know all the references, but every time I watch an episode, I'm like dying laughing. Great show.
Yeah, one of the best. Not like this one.
No.
That you're listening to now. Against your will, probably.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and Always Sunny's on, listen to us because Always Sunny's always on, but it is a better show.
Yeah, but they got money. You know? They're good. They don't need your help.
They got that Danny DeVito money.
Your listening attendance is consider it charity, and we're working to make it a tax write-off.
I didn't think about that this year when I filed my taxes. Next year, maybe.
I mean, us making the show is double charity. Anyway, this is the Non-Essential Podcast every week. Well, it should be every week, but it rarely is these days. We tell each other stories, and they're about anything that we put our hearts to.
Yeah, sometimes we put our hearts to it. Sometimes we're just like, eh.
I'm like super in don't give a shit mode. I'm drinking a milkshake on mic. And I'm like, because I was having like one of my blood sugar crashes like at the end of work. So it was one of those things where it's like, it's almost fun in a way because it's like, oh, I get to have Jack in the Box because I need it.
If I still did like the random like episode titles that have less to do about the topic of the week's episode and more just like a phrase from it, I think it would be Medical Jack in the Box. Because like,
get this, they never said ever. This man needs an ultimate cheeseburger. Stat.
If there's a doctor out there that does like prescribe fast food, let me know because I'm looking for a doctor. I need a doctor. When I say I'm looking, I'm not actively looking. I'm supposed to be looking, but
I want to be a doctor who just tells everybody what they want to hear, and they die at like 35. I was like, wow, you're eating that much? Cool.
Well, if that diet's not where, have you tried eating more or less? I don't know. Just do what you're doing. You look great. As the guy's like skin's falling off from malnourishment.
Why would eating so much be a bad thing? You're like you're not hungry. That's great.
So I don't even know where this show's off to a great start because I don't
cool.
know where I'm at or what we're doing. But
That's what I'm talking about, man. Fuck the structure. I'm gonna burp in mic. I'm gonna I'm gonna kick back. I'm gonna do this show laying on my side, just like trying to like eat grapes without using my hands.
I'm jealous. You got the milkshake. I'm over here with like a bottle of like tap water.
I had that too, but like I said, I had a medical emergency, so it's not treating myself. This is medicine.
Well, I will not deny you of it then, because that is un-American.
Actually, if it were medicine, I would get it denied.
Yeah, that's true.
And because that's American.
Or that like $2 milkshake would cost you $860.
Fucking $2. I wish. These things are like fucking $3 or $4 now.
I'm old. I don't know how much stuff costs.
I just hand people a card and they give me things.
Yeah.
And so far, they haven't handed me my card back without my things.
I was gonna say that's where you give them your card. You either get the thing or you get this like kind of pitiful but also a little mad look. Like,
yeah.
If you've ever had your card declined, for me, fortunately, it's been a long time since it was declined for actual not having money. But every now and then, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that look that they give you, and I get it because from their end, it's this like mix of like, man, this guy can't afford the $3 candy bar, but also like, if I say that his card's declined, are they going to understand? Are they about to get irate at me? Or they,
yeah,
it's kind of it's like the most awkward situation to be in when your stupid card.
So that was the thing. Like to me, it was never like when I worked customer service and stuff, and I had to take people's cards. Like if it got declined, I never it was never like a look at this poor fucker. It was fear. Because I knew whatever happened with this card, they were going to blame me for.
Right.
And it's like, maybe our machines didn't work, but most of the time there was something else up. My card never gets declined, but I remember one time I was in the grocery store and like I completely froze up and forgot my PIN number like an old man. Like it was one of the scariest moments of my life because it was like I seriously I was just like, well, fuck, I guess I can't buy this shit. And I had to go home and like look it up because I still had the thing from my bank that told it to me. And it wasn't like I just got it. Like I knew that PIN for years and years, and then just one day gone.
It's so fucking stupid how our brains do that. That's why I'm laughing so hard, is because I've had that happen to me at an ATM where it's not nearly as like embarrassing or big a deal.
Well, that's how I found out. I was like trying to get cash out of an ATM before I did my shopping.
So it at least wasn't like at the register.
No, but it was in front of my friends, and I had to kind of explain to them why.
I'm just an idiot.
Yeah, and that's a scary moment when you have money, but you do not have access to it because your own brain has failed you.
And like you say, you could use it. It's not like I'm using my PIN like multiple times every day, but you've used it enough, and it's 4 digits.
I almost was. Like, that was right around the time I kind of stopped carrying cash all the time. Because I never needed it. I would go to that store every day on my lunch break.
Maybe your brain just likes the feeling of cash, and it's like.
Then let me get cash from the ATM. What the fuck? Yeah. You just doomed us both. But that was a shameful moment.
Weird thing about brains, it's like once you it's like you kind of like half forget it, but you're so sure that you know it that so when it doesn't work. The brain just completely fucking shuts down. Like
that's the thing, like how your brain, it's like phone numbers and shit, where it's like you'll remember all the numbers, but your brain will put them in a whole fucking new Da Vinci Code fucked up order. And it's
once
like,
it's wrong, it's just stays wrong.
It's like, why'd you do that to me? Like you just fucked us. Like now I'll never know what the real number is.
I've had that happen like once or twice just at the ATM, and yeah, I had it happen recently with like our business one, but it's because I hadn't had to make a deposit for a while. So then when I had to, there had been a little bit of like a month or so, like so not long enough to be like, wow, this is I should have remembered it, but it happens to me with names all the time. If like I'll have a customer come in that we see like every month that I've seen every month for years. And I'll know their name, but if like the wrong name comes to my mind first, you're just fucked.
Dicko Toboggan.
Yeah, right. How you doing, Dicko? I'm gonna say that to the first person who walks in tomorrow, and they'll think I'm insulting them. They'll be like, "No, I swear I'm not. Listen to my show." On second thought, please don't.
Yeah.
You think I'm a professional, and that show will shatter that.
Well, if you want business to cool down, listen to this show.
Not a great way to pay bills is to look for ways to cool down your business.
That's like a fucking bad IBM commercial. It's like, I'm looking for ways to slow down my upstart business.
Anyway.
Oh, did you have something? I thought we would keep going like this for...
No, I'm perfectly happy going like this for a half hour and calling it quits. But I do have something, I think, kind of.
Definitely, maybe.
So, Eugene Hardiman was born in 1901 in Jerseyville, Illinois.
Can we get that fact checked before we continue to turn to the judges?
The judges are giving me a go-ahead.
They're telling me no. I'm getting no in the earpiece here.
Well, your judges are assholes.
My judges are the same judges in baseball. They fucking suck.
The pitch hits somebody in the dugout and they're like, strike! Sorry, I wasn't looking. But I will never admit that I wasn't looking, so strike. And if you argue with me, I'm tossing your ass. And then like
3 months later, they'll be in like a press conference. They're like, yeah, we might have missed that one.
Yeah.
All right, Eugene.
He was born to Randy and Sarah Hardiman, who were farmers, because everybody that we talk about on this show is born to farmers.
Or in my case, like my dad wishes he could be a farmer, which is a sad state when like that's what you strive to be, but you just don't know how to grow a potato.
I was going to say, because you started with that, it's a sad state if you want to be a farmer. And I was going to say, well, there's nothing wrong with farming. Is a great profession. But
when you can't attain it,
yeah,
when the fucking mysteries of the earth elude you.
I couldn't do it, but not because I couldn't grow stuff. It's because
it's a lack of willpower.
It's a lot of fucking work, and I am not built for a lot of work.
And that's the shit I'm giving that's what I'm giving my dad shit for. Is he wants to be about that life, but he doesn't. But he
doesn't want that effort.
Yeah, the way a farmer works, probably only takes a collective like 10 hours off a week. My dad will put all the hours of a week into eating Nutter Butters.
Hey, I like Nutter Butters, so nothing wrong with that, but that does not make you a farmer.
Yeah, until you can find a way to grow them, which I think he's still working on.
So Eugene was born to farmers, and they were not prosperous farmers. They were relatively poor farmers. Eugene was also the fifth child in a house of 8 children. I don't understand how people have more than like maybe 2. Like the thought of 2 scares me. The thought of 1 scares me. We have 1, and that still scares me.
Yeah,
but
it should. They're a threat.
Yeah.
Once you have 2, it's a tag team match. Once you give them a third, then you're outnumbered.
Yeah. Tara was doing family pictures over the weekend. One family has 2 kids, but another on the way. And at one point, their kids were running around. We were at a park, and they're relatively young, and the kids were running around. And the dad ended up like picking one up in each arm to drag them back. And I just kind of looked at him and said, like, what are you going to do when the third one's here? And he just goes, "Oh, you have to just kick one down." I was like, that's the correct answer. Put him in your place.
Just
Obviously,
shove
he
them
was
all
joking.
into like one giant hamster ball and push them around
That's
like
what
it's
I was
Katamari
thinking.
Damacy.
Yeah, yeah. They'd love it because they'd think it's hilarious. I'd love if it as a parent because,
I
it's
think it's
easy.
hilarious. Yeah.
Well, that too, especially when you get to the hill. Like, hope you want to be at the bottom of this thing, Joey. Anyway, so Eugene was when he was about 8 or 9, he was expelled from school after being wrongfully accused of starting a fire. So, of course, at the time, they didn't know he was wrongfully accused. There was some other kids that were fucking around with something and started the fire. And, of course, they got out of there, and Eugene just happened to be the one in the area when people came running. And he caught the blame for it, and he got kicked out. He was sent to a boys' reformatory, where he was constantly in trouble despite always following the rules. People would always note how like soft-spoken and like congenial he seemed, yet he was always in trouble. Turns out it's because he was just an easy mark for the other kids. He was like such a like kind of soft-spoken and good kid that like he never would really defend himself when he'd get blamed for stuff.
I relate to that.
Yeah, like after the fact, a lot of people are like, well, it was just his nature. He was kind of reserved and quiet and whatever. I think he was like me. He just realized like it wasn't worth the fucking effort.
Yeah.
Because
that's the thing. Like, it's rarely, it's like, oh, I'm a pushover. Like, it's not being a pushover in that moment. It's being a long-term pushover for conflict in general. It's like, it's much easier to just like float and
right.
let shit batter you around.
And it was like never anything like super bad, little things here and there, but enough that like his reputation was as a kid, a troublemaker kind of, somebody that was always being disciplined, despite like otherwise seeming
being the most mild-mannered dude in reality.
Yeah, now that would like end you up in like, I don't know, like forced psychiatric care because they think that you have some like deep-seated, but they just thought he was good at like faking, being good, and then when the teacher's backs were turned, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
But he made his way through, and after aging out of the reformatory, so basically like once you're 18, here you go. He decided he wanted to pursue an education, but he couldn't really get into school without any money and without any real, it wasn't like he had a high school diploma. But he was eventually recruited into a technical school for air conditioning repair, which was still relatively new. By the time he was 18, commercial air conditioning or modern day air conditioning like we know it had only been around for about his lifetime, about 18 years. And he was told that he could save money on his tuition if he helped recruit other students, basically work for the school and get more people to sign up, the more kids he could sign up. It's almost like a Mary Kay, multi-level marketing thing. So he worked his butt off and he managed to sign up a bunch of students. But it turned out the school was a fraud, and when it got busted, he was prosecuted as part of the operation. Because,
you were a willing participant in a pyramid scheme.
Right. So. And this poor kid who was always getting blamed for other stuff, once again, now he's getting arrested because he didn't know it was a fraud, but that's really hard to convince a court when the rest of your school was a complete. It was very similar to...
that's what sucks about a pyramid scheme is you're buying into something and then they you are unknowingly becoming a perpetrator.
Well, that's the thing, and that's why they do it.
Once you start recruiting people, then you're just as culpable for fraud.
Yeah, and a lot of times more so. I mean, that's why they do it. It's because it gives them a scapegoat or a patsy to be like, obviously the whole school can be like, this whole school was Eugene's idea, but, they could, it helps spread the blame a little bit.
Yeah.
So he was prosecuted, but he didn't do any real like hard time or anything for it. It was just yet another mark on his record.
Just the most ignorant, like, fuck up in the history of the world.
Yeah. So once he kind of got back on his feet, he spent the next 5 or 6 years kind of just scraping by on odd jobs, bouncing around between cheap tenements and boarding homes. You know how hard it is already. Our whole system, we've talked about even modern day, it's not any better than it used to be. But especially when you come from a poor background, his family really wasn't clearly there for him. There were so many kids, and when he got in trouble at such a young age and sent away, they weren't close, so he couldn't really count on family for much. So you don't have that background, and the only reputation that you really have is you getting in trouble and now getting arrested and, coming from a boarding school. It's hard to, you're not going to walk into a bank and become the bank manager.
Unless he does.
Yeah, well, no, he doesn't. Oh. Not yet. But he made do. He was an honest worker, and he'd find whatever work he could. But it was at one such boarding home where Eugene had his next brush with the law, where he was accused of stealing jewelry from the owner's wife. And, that stuff happens all the time, too. But when they called the police and said, she's got stuff missing and we know Eugene took it, he was the only one that had access to it and all that stuff. One of the other tenants also came forward and said that she had stuff missing. And though they never found the stolen jewelry, given his reputation as a drifter and his prior history, he was once again arrested. Turns out, again, after the fact, much too late to help Eugene out, it was all an insurance scam. Of course, he never stole any jewelry, but they could report it as stolen and get the insurance payout, and they still had the fucking jewelry, too. But Eugene was just that fucking perennial, easy mark. But again, he didn't do much time, but it's just another strike on his record. So he continued to bounce around from job to job and place to place, but eventually he ended up landing a steady job. He saved up enough money to buy a car. He really made it work as of all things, a door-to-door vacuum salesman. And when he was starting to make good money at that, that's why he put his first real money into a car, because it really fucking sucks to lug vacuums around on foot. Obviously you're not carrying multiple.
How many did you sell today? 2, because that's how many I could carry.
They were both on the 8th floor to the same lady. I carried them at once. It sucked.
And I didn't sell them for much because I was tired.
I'd like to picture, whoever, because all those door-to-door things are almost the same as the multi-level marketing, although this one wasn't a scam. He was an honest salesman for an honest company. But I'm just picturing some, fat, owner sales guy. He's like, yeah, kid, go out and sell Leeds vacuums. And then handing him, this circus trunk-sized thing packed with, 20 vacuums that he's just dragging around. It takes him 20 minutes to get from, one house to the next. But he made a good go of it. He was able to find a steady place to live. He bought a car. And then on the morning of August 16th, 1922, he headed into the city with the little bit of cash he had left after buying the car to open up his very first bank account. Now, if you think it's odd that we know the exact date that he went to open up his bank account, it's the whole reason why he lands on the Non-Essential Podcast.
Hey, welcome.
Yeah. Turns out there was something else that happened on the morning of August 16th, 1922. Happens at the same time, in fact. So as Eugene pulled up next to the First Chicago Bank and Trust, 3 armed men suddenly jumped into the car. So that's not what you want when you're going to the bank. Eugene, of course, immediately thought he was being carjacked because 3 armed men jumped into the fucking car and they ordered him to take off. So Eugene took off.
Yeah, that would be funny if he jumped out of the car and they told him to take off.
Take off. They hopped in and told him to go, and thinking he was being carjacked and not wanting to be shot, he took off. Unbeknownst to him, the three men that jumped into the car thought he was their getaway driver, as they had just robbed the bank.
Fucking go!
Oh, okay.
I would love to be just that asshole, like, not until you put on your seatbelt.
But seatbelts haven't been invented yet. Well, we're going to be sitting here a long time, buddy.
Just shotgun to the head. Just bam!
Yep. So, yeah, the three men were part of the Saltescatelli gang out of Chicago, and they thought he was the getaway driver because he pulled up just in time, right where they were supposed to meet, and he thought he was being carjacked.
He was damn good at
it. He got out of there.
You're a natural, kid.
Although the three men...
Too bad our actual getaway driver's fucked.
I wish we had the actual conversation as it went down, because it had to be pure comedic gold. But the three men very quickly realized that he was not the right guy, but they was at least getting him out of there. Eugene, for his part, took a little bit longer to kind of figure out what was going on, but still didn't want to get shot. So he was going to do whatever
I would play pretty not dumb, because I would be aware of what's happening, but I would definitely Stockholm syndrome my way out of that, where I'm yeah, we gotta fucking go. Hurry up, everybody.
You're the getaway man, right? Getaway. Yeah, I am. Where's my cut?
I watched Drive with Ryan Gosling a lot. I think I can get us away.
So when they kind of figured out that he was the wrong guy, they ordered him to pull into a gas station, where they got out and stole a car, and they took off.
And got
and
caught.
Eugene was just kind of sitting there. Well, not immediately, but Eugene did. So,
God damn it.
Yeah, and of course he tells him this whole story is, I was just going to the bank to open a bank account, and these three men I don't know hopped in the car. Of course, they had left their masks and a couple other things in the back. So they knew it was the car. And of course, the police did not fucking believe his story, because given his background and given that story, it just doesn't seem very plausible. So once again, he was hauled in, and this time booked on charges of being an accessory to bank robbery, which, unlike the other charges, was quite a much bigger charge.
I mean, you don't even have to embellish that, though. You can just say you were carjacked. You were just tell the cops they made you do it. The thing is, he's always in this gray area of he's being coerced into doing fucked up shit, but never directly at gunpoint or anything. So it's always it's never his choice or his idea. But he also never can get out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the problem, too, is that he didn't have, at this point, having a life where he's basically a vagrant, and the times that he wasn't, he was always, nobody would vouch for him, because his record was always getting in trouble for stuff, or getting caught doing stuff, or what they thought was getting caught doing stuff. The only person at this point that he could really, try to have vouched for him was his boss. And unfortunately, the way these things go, running a legitimate company like that and wanting to avoid the embarrassment of, vouching for the guy and being wrong, the boss really didn't, he said that he seemed like a good guy, but he couldn't give him an alibi, or couldn't say that there's no way he wasn't part of this gang. And of course the other three guys were caught, but they all said, they were pinning it on him. Their story was basically they didn't want to be linked back to the actual gang. So they said that they were just, low level, I'm sure they didn't use the term, we're low level street toughs, but basically their story was that the three of them were brothers, and they were recruited by Eugene, and it was really Eugene's whole operation. So once again, he had a whole bunch of shit pinned on him. He ended up being charged with 20 years for it, because that's, a much more serious offense. Fortunately for Eugene, at some point, an attorney by the name of Grover Sherburne kind of came along his case. In the papers, that was the one thing. They said he swore his innocence up and down, and he gave this story, but he really couldn't prove that he wasn't part of the gang. But how do you prove a negative? It's our criminal justice system isn't always the greatest. And fortunately for him, this Grover Sherburne was known for looking into these kind of cases. He was somebody that also knew how problematic the police and the criminal justice system could be.
I know damn well how unlucky a man can be.
He had just earned some notoriety by winning, defending a man named Philip Ingle in the infamous, I'm sure you've heard of this, Oklahoma versus Ingle case, in which Ingle was a man that he worked in the cattle industry, and he ended up getting arrested for some kind of fraud, but it was one of those deals where it's almost like the oil industry. Out west, the cattle industry was such a powerful thing that they were kept shifting and like changing the rules to pin stuff on this guy in order to make more money. Basically, anybody with money is a shifty asshole, and he was just one of the people that things got stuck on. But this attorney was able to win his case, and so when he came across Eugene's case, he took it up. It was retried, and Eugene was found not guilty and was released from prison after, I think by the time that the second trial was up, he had done about 6 years. So it wasn't a quick thing, but at least it wasn't 20.
I don't know. I feel like if I had the life he had, I'd be like, just give me the fucking chair.
He had a better outlook at this point, because this mild manner, whatever guy that kept getting fucking accused of all this stuff and getting it pinned on him, once again, he got out of it, but once again found himself back on the streets with no place to live and no job. And as hard as it was to find that work the last time, it's really fucking difficult to find work when, even though he ended up getting even though it ended up getting tossed out, it was kind of more tossed out on a technicality. So a lot of people still thought he was probably guilty, that the case was just mismanaged. So Eugene decided to turn to a life of crime. At this point, he's like, fuck it. If I'm going to be, guilty of everything anyway.
I'm a natural.
Yeah. So he spent the next 10 years committing mostly petty, but, robberies and thefts and those kind of things. He was actually pretty good at it. A few times he did get caught after the fact. It was for minor stuff. He never ended up doing a whole lot of time. And he made enough money doing criminal activities that he lived much better that way than he did when he was trying to make an honest buck. That is up until December of 1932. Eugene attempted to rob the jewelry counter at the newly opened Sears store in downtown Chicago. Unfortunately for Eugene, at the time that he went in to perform his robbery, he was holding the clerk at gunpoint. It happened to be the same time that the payroll company was dropping off the payroll, and there was, of course, an armed guard, the transport people. They were armed, and they saw the stick-up happening, and they ended up shooting and killing Eugene. Turns out the gun that Eugene had wasn't even loaded, because he wasn't a killer. Right. Didn't matter, though. They didn't find that out until after the fact. But I'd say, the last 10 years of his life, he lived better than the whole, first 20-some years of his life anyway. And then he went out in a blaze of kind of glory. Not really, because it was another kind of bumbled.
Yeah, it's kind of just how bad gets worse,
Yeah.
Like you didn't do all this shit and got really unlucky, and a lot of bad shit happened to you, and then you finally cave and become a bad guy, and you get lit up immediately.
Well, it wasn't immediately. He made it for 10 years, but he got lit up in the worst possible way, where
it wasn't even the cops. It was just shit.
Well, that's the thing is, if he had robbed him a half hour earlier or a half hour later, he probably would have got away with the stuff. But because there wasn't typically an armed, person there on site. But
I do think robbing a place without a loaded gun is just Now you're just being silly. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I get that he's probably like, fuck, I'm going to turn to robbery and stuff because I'm getting, convicted of it anyway, but I'm not a murderer. But at that point, it's like, I wouldn't really have that much regard for human life because every human he ever met threw him under the fucking bus.
Or tried to directly kill him.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like, maybe I've just watched Reservoir Dogs too many times, but it's like, I'm not saying go around just shooting up everybody in a bank, but I feel like if you're a robber, you probably have that mentality of like, I don't want to kill anybody, but if you're between me and getting what I want, or you're trying to shoot me, I'm willing to shoot back at you.
Right. It is always a very bad idea to use a toy gun or an unloaded gun because you've just given the impression that you have a gun.
Yeah.
So if anybody else has a gun, you're fucked.
You've absolutely raised the stakes to that level, but you're bluffing.
Right.
But no one else is.
So I guess that was his one ultimate mistake. But
to be fair, I never claimed he was a smart man. Just a knucklehead.
That's the thing is, nobody ever described him as particularly enterprising or particularly bright. People liked him enough, but not enough to not accuse him of shit when they were the ones about to get in trouble. But yeah, so he wasn't he wasn't this like master criminal by any means. And he didn't have any special tools there. He just... it's the guy that kind of went with the flow until the flow took him to the life of crime. He's like, fine, God damn it. I'll
and then
turn to a life of crime.
That call,
so it's a short story, but the only other fact that I have about Eugene is that he's completely fake. No, I just made him up 100%. And not even ahead of time, like as we were talking, mostly. I jotted some scattered notes to keep myself on track, but I wanted to see if I could tell a completely bullshit story and not fuck it up. There is no Eugene Hardiman.
So here's the fucked up thing about that. I was actually just thinking, like, this is a really tame story. Like,
yeah, one thing I've learned
compared to like some of our real shit,
I've got a long history of trying to come up with bullshit story. I used to do it. This was 1,000%. It was like 4:00 this afternoon, and it was super busy at work, and I didn't have time to do anything. And I was like, creepypasta. And then I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I want to try this. And I was terrified of trying it because
try to riff it.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if I could, and I was so terrified that it would completely fall apart.
Well, you picked a good day to do it, because
I know, when you said that, I was like, yes, you're not going to like pick apart the stuff too much.
No, I was totally willing to go with the flow. Just like Eugene.
Yeah. So it's one of those that, anyway, my whole point was, my long history of bullshitting, what you always aim for the middle. If you go too outlandish, it's hard to keep it coherent or
but I feel like most of our stories, that's why I was like, oh wow, this seems pretty like tame and stuff, because like we always find like the most batshit parts of history. So
you're saying I should have I should have included a part where wild dogs mauled somebody to death and he got blamed for it as a mass murderer or something like that.
If you had gone like a dog had bit his dick off, I would have believed it.
Yeah.
Because it's just that is in keeping with the whole thesis of this show.
So I'll keep that in mind next time I decide to completely bullshit a story. It'll be like... But that means I also have to find one that's also like way above and beyond batshit crazy, that's real, to keep you on your toes.
Maybe that's something we should do, is like... Because this is a good idea. Maybe just for like a few weeks, we tell a story and the other person has to decide if it's real or fake.
I love that idea because that's just a fun, it's kind of, me, I like these corny, like almost game show-esque. We've done a couple things like that before. The only drawback to that for me is that if I know you're being critical, this only worked because I knew you weren't going to like question it too much at the beginning because you had no reason to. If you know it might be fake, I'm going to have a much harder time, like, I don't know the right phrase for this because it's audio, but like keeping a straight face, basically. Like, I'll have a much harder time, like,
you underestimate the lack of fucking energy I put into this.
That's true. I'll call down there and make sure there's somebody that keeps all the milkshakes away from you, so your blood sugar's crashing the whole time. You're just like, I need an ambulance. I'm like, but is it real or fake, Ben?
I don't give a fuck, Steve.
Just hear your head hit the desk.
I'm sweating. I can't walk. I'm pissed. Nah, well, it's my turn next week, and you'll get to decide, real or fake.
Really?
Creepypasta.
That was even more unfair because there's like a zero distinction between. That's a great idea, though, too, because that, if you fuck up, is right in line with a real creepypasta. So, like, if you like kind of stumble your word. My biggest hurdle for this, like, this would have been a lot easier. It wouldn't have been nearly as much as
maybe that would be a variation of it. Is like, sorry to cut you off, but like, it instead of real or fake creepypasta, it's real story or creepypasta.
Yeah, and we've kind of talked about that before.
Because there's a lot of real stories out there that you would be surprised they feel like it was something out of a fucking quick internet story.
What I like about the best about this, anyway, this is our classic. Let's like show ideas on the show while we're recording. But what I like about
we
that
don't
is
talk about the show off the air, guys.
No.
We pretend
we don't talk to each other at all.
We're like you. We pretend it didn't happen.
Have you ever seen those articles about like real life, like movie or TV show co-stars that hate each other in real life? Like they're not friends, but on screen they're like the best, like their spouses or best friends or something. That's us. Like as soon as the show's done, it's like, fuck you, Ben. I'm not talking to you.
Yeah, we're like Penn and Teller. Steve never talks.
But anyway, what I was getting at with those that are fun is because then you can do 2 or 3 of them even and do the shorter ones because there's so many really cool things out there that I've come across for the show that are just too short in and of themselves to do an episode on. Mm-hmm. But if you mix it where you're like, well, one of these is real and one is fake, which is which, then that opens the door to some really cool stories too. So yeah, that's an idea. What made this one harder
is pretty much all of our ideas.
What made this one... Like I said, this was more an exercise for me because I could have written a fleshed out story that was complete BS and like done it fine and not been like nervous about. I was nervous about this one because I didn't do that. Like I literally just wrote a handful. Like my notes don't even take up a full page. Not that the story was that long anyway, but I'm like I want just enough to kind of keep myself on track with a timeline, and I want to see if I can just. And that's probably why it came off as tame too, because coming up with details as you're saying them was harder than I thought it would be. Yeah. Actually, it was exactly as hard as I thought it would be.
That's what I like about it is like, you know, we got to listen to you craft a lie for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's hard to do. You're like,
yeah. Although if you go back and listen,
sociopath.
If you go back and listen to the show again, there's a couple times where I stumble all the time anyway, so you'd be like, oh, well, you know, you wouldn't think anything of it.
I mean, it's partially, like I said, I'm like fucking comatose from Jack in the Box. Yeah. But like, I swear to God, I didn't notice at all. Yeah. Like I said, the only potential clue, I was like, this is actually pretty mild for a history story.
Yeah, so I wanted to ratchet it. I did want to, like... I wanted a longer, like, build up to the life of crime thing, but
hey, I mean,
I just ran out of time.
Eugene took a life of his own. You just went where Eugene took you.
So, come back in 3 years when the story of Eugene Hardiman is hitting the big screens and winning Oscars. But,
wouldn't that be fucked up if people only, like, found out about the character but didn't listen to the episode? And so everybody thought Eugene was real.
You know what? For decades, like ever since the internet really came into like common use for people, for like you and me, I've always thought about like how interesting it would be to try to come up with something like that. That's complete. Like, what was the?
It just, I would love to see if this like had to keep going for you, and you had to like carry the lie into like your 70s, and you're like, I found another journal from Eugene.
He was my great uncle. But yeah, there's like that whole phenomenon. I think the most famous, or one of the early ones, was that like when somebody had injected a female shark into that like skate sharks or SWAT sharks or whatever that old like really terrible cartoon was. It was something about like humanoid sharks.
Watch your fucking mouth. I had a skate shark as a kid. It was one of my favorite toys.
But they went back and were like, oh yeah, there was a female character, and there never was, but it became so ingrained that people are so used to seeing it that to this day it's what the Mandela effect almost, or a variation of that, where they swear. Yeah, I watched that episode, and so like I've always been curious about that. But then there's a part of me that's like, I'm an asshole, but I think completely rewriting human history, even in such a small and inconsequential way, like it just highlights one of the things I hate about the internet, and that how good it is at spreading false information. And we're seeing the actual real world ramifications of that a lot now. So, but anyway, I still part of me is like, but it would be really fun to come up with like the most inane, like doesn't hurt anybody, but like see how many people can buy into it before, like, see if it can become this cultural thing where people just swear it was real.
The trick is finding that line like you did today. Walk the line of apathy really well. Like just enough that I pay attention, but not enough to care.
Yeah, and you just hit a phrase that I was about to say. The second part of that equation, and the part that I could never reach, is you have to be somebody that, or have access to something that people will pay attention to. And we've got like 12 years experience on the internet that neither of us know how to get people to pay attention to us whatsoever.
Yeah. The lie anyone would believe because they'll never hear it.
Right. And even if it did like kind of start to go around, they trace it back immediately because they'd be like, wait, for the first of this, why was Steve Gibson the only person to keep retweeting these links?
That's I've just made myself sad now.
But anyway, Eugene Hardiman, everybody. He was a hell of a fella.
I fucking love Eugene.
I hope there is a guy with that name out there.
Eugene rocks. He fucking tried to rob a bank with a pop gun and it failed. He rocks.
Uh-oh. I just found a obituary from the Columbus Dispatch for a Eugene Hardiman. And he just died in 2018.
And a stick up.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I don't know. I'm kind of happy I came up with a fake name that somebody actually had, because I am so bad at coming up with fake names.
I mean, there's no such thing as a real fucking name anymore.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. I think fake names, I'm probably not as bad at them as I make myself out to be, because when you know they're fake, they sound fake. But then I see some of these things from actual published authors where their main character name is something like Rock Punch Hard. And you're like, what? Like, okay, well, maybe I can do this writing thing. I don't know. Falls in with what you said about your dad and the farmer. It's like, I think the ability there, like the physical ability, not necessarily to be the great writer, but anybody can put words on paper, except for I don't have it's like, I want to do it in like 2 hours. I want to sit down and in 2 hours have a complete novel done. I don't want to have to work on it for like months on end or whatever.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy because, like you said, it's like we can't even say that we don't have any like stick-to-itiveness. Yeah, we've been doing a podcast for 12 years.
Right. But with minimal effort.
Yeah, it's like it's bite-sized effort every week. And if we could just harness that, we could put it into like one project that actually did a thing successfully. So
see, that's the evolution of this show, is we're going to become one of those like serialized podcasts, like Serial, but it'll be completely fucking made up, and we'll still go back and forth each week. So like the story will it'll be like one of those stupid ass like get to know your coworkers ad lib games where each person writes like one sentence of a story. But we'll keep it going for 12 fucking years because we've got nothing better to do. I just need access to all those corny like what are they called? Stings, like the music stings where it's like
They play ads for those like podcasts and stuff on like daytime radio, which is really weird to me.
Yeah, because it's like
podcasts were supposed to replace the radio, and then it's like listen to the fucking Murder Mountain podcast, and like then they do it. They have this dramatic like. There were and 15 women went missing, and it plays like the sound effect, and then it just cuts to like me or you, just like some nerdy nerd who's like, yeah, and then just imagine if you were one of these women and you just disappeared, that would suck, and and that's how they talk, and that's how they try to like promote their podcast. It's really weird.
Well, what's great is I had to look that up because I thought that was such a great podcast name, Murder Mountain. And there's multiple podcasts called Murder Mountain. And there's also Mountain Murders.
I swear to God, that wasn't based off I just picked the most generic name I could think of.
Yeah, I'm finding at least 3 or 4 different Mountain Murders podcasts. And like one's an Audible one. So like not even just like necessarily a small random like whatever. But then there's also Mountain Murders. And so we need like the Mountain Murders or the Murder Mountain Murders. Like we need to hop on this
Murder on Mountain Murder.
Yeah.
I like that.
I knew that would be
a t-shirt idea.
Murder Mountain Murders. Murder Mountain Murders, yeah. Murder
on Mount Murder.
Yeah. I'm not jotting that down. I started keeping t-shirt ideas so that we can open a store when we have enough of them.
I remember Beelzebuddy.
Oh, I forgot that one. I'm going to add that too.
I don't remember what episode or the context, but I remember loving it.
Yeah, that one was one of the better ones. But where the fuck is my file here? This is important before I forget.
We're doing merchandise meetings live on the air.
Well, we need people to know that eventually a t-shirt...
Yeah, if you would wear a fucking Beelzebuddy hat, hit us up. So, like, because if we sell one of them, well, I'll fucking make them. I don't care.
Well, that's the thing. It doesn't cost.
I don't care if I operate at a loss the rest of my life. Like, I just need one other person to think it's a good idea.
Well, here's the thing: is we will make these T-shirts, and then I am going to buy one of each of them because I love them.
Yeah, me too. Like, that's what's sad is we'll do a show for 12 years without an audience, and we promote it with our own clothing.
Anyway, that's probably enough workshopping on the show.
Just consider the last 20 minutes a bonus behind the scenes pod.
Yeah, most places charge you for this behind the scenes stuff, and we're just like, here you go.
We're just too lazy to make a fucking Patreon. So, you're welcome.
Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the completely bullshit story.
Yeah, you're right. If you hated it, call Steve a liar and harass him on Twitter.
You're a lying liar.
Yeah, just DM him liar every day until he cries.
It won't take much, I promise. I'm constantly on the precipice of that sad. As is, yeah.
Oh, that's sad. Steve in his Beelzebuddy shirt, tears down his face.
Where the fuck is my Word document here? Oh, well, I'll find it. And add Beelzebuddy and the Murder Mountain Murders.
The thing is, it's 2 ideas. You could just start a new document.
Yeah, but I need to know what that third idea was because it was good. Maybe I had it here. Oh yeah, I did have it. I had it somewhere else, and it was your Limey Peppermint Bastards. I really want a Limey Peppermint Bastards shirt because that sounds like a punk band.
That's pretty good too. I actually want all these shirts. All right, we're done. Thanks for listening. Buy our t-shirts whenever we fucking decide to make them.
Goodbye.